I first set out upon the path to enlightenment many, many decades ago. As a child, I began studying Judaism and self-hypnosis. In my late adolescence, I began poring over Christianity. In my ambition to become a minister, I somehow got hoodwinked into joining a cult. That's not really the right way to put it. I turned myself in thinking I could change them from the inside out. Yep, I was that idiot. After close to a decade of that adventure, I successfully escaped. And using what good karma, if there is such a thing, I had, I found myself in a position where I could study, at least study and practice the spiritual path as a full-time job. So for my first 3-year retreat, oh yes, I skipped the Christian cult. My first 3-year retreat was basically a survey of many religions. Basically, I was like the large, heavy sphere in a pinball machine, only I was, instead of bouncing between bouncers, I forgot what they're called, I bounced between Neo-Taoism, Hindu, and contemporary metaphysics. I remember, this is how long ago was this? This is before the public internet was a thing, where if you wanted books, you had to go to a library or you had to go to a bookstore. And I remember going to bookstores and seeing just, aisle after aisle of Buddhist books. But I saw that there were very small books on, Taoism and Hinduism and contemporary metaphysics. So I started there because, I was lazy. But soon, like a space traveler who ventured too close to the event horizon and found himself sucked into a black hole, I found myself drawn to Buddhism. And nefariously enough, the first book that crossed my path on the subject, this is a paraphrase, The Psychocosmic Power. That was a Psychocosmic Power. And this guy was a self-help guru. A guy was all about manifesting using the 6-syllable mantra. That was my first introduction to the 6-syllable mantra. And I worked so hard to master that bad boy. My second retreat began, oddly enough, with an introduction to the Lam Rim. The Dalai Lama wrote a book, a commentary on Essence of Refined Gold, which was a Sutric Lam Rim, teaching me of history and renunciation, compassion and the wisdom of emptiness. The book began by saying, this is the complete path to enlightenment. I thought, woohoo, that's one-stop shopping. But the book concludes by saying, oh, hey, did I say this was a complete path? No, because you need highest yoga tantra empowerments if you want to become a Buddha. Wasting no time, I got out the yellow pages, started calling Dharma centers. And the first one that answered, luckily, oddly enough, wasn't just Buddhist, wasn't just yellow hat sect, but it was a culty one. Yep. And so I started working with those bad boys, and pretty soon, once again, I realized, oh gosh, I don't want to be like these people. This teacher is rigid and scary, and these students are rigid and cranky and frightened. And I got enough fear and crankiness in me already. I don't want more. But once again, in my hubris, I thought, ha ha, I'm so spiritual. I will learn all I have to teach. I will master all that I have to teach. I will become one of the teachers and I will transform the organization from within. That's just how arrogant I was. But they said, hey, basically, they inferred by their behavior they had no use for disabled folk who were not well healed. So that basically broke my heart. That was so... The people saying that I could not come to a tantric empowerment because I could not bring money, that just broke my brain. Because the Buddha never charged for teachings. And the Buddha did never teach elitism. Check this out. As the Buddha lay dying, according to the Panindabbana Sutta, he said, and I quote, and I paraphrase, I have taught with an outstretched arm and an open hand, keeping no secrets. And here were these buffoons, oddly dressed fellows, keeping secrets and saying that if I didn't do what they say, I couldn't practice these secret teachings and become a Buddha. And that was really tough. And so after that, I began studying the Kagyu, and they were just as bad, and the Nyingma, and they were just as bad. But as luck would happen, I stumbled. Well, I began thinking about unifying all the schools of Buddhism, specifically the Mahayana and Vajrayana. And I thought, well, what's the mantra that is universal to both those schools? The 6-syllable mantra that I'd learned all those years ago. And at this point, I was on the cusp of my third 3-year retreat. And I said, that's what I'll do. I'll simplify my practice so I can appeal to more people and help more people. How cool could that be? And somehow I found out about a book that was highly regarded on the subject. It was called Heart Treasure of the Enlightened Ones. And it was actually 2 books in one. It was a commentary and a root text. Now, over the years, I found that the commentary kept contradicting the root text, and they were basically on 2 different stages of the path, that no matter how well respected the commentator was on the Bodhisattva index, it was only a 3. The author was a 9. So after a while, I stopped reading the commentary and just focused on Zal Patul Rinpoche's root text. And it took a long time because I had to do a lot of unlearning. But he helped me to transcend the rigidity that I had been indoctrinated in, and the complexity and the superstition. And he helped me see that I only needed one archetype, I only needed one mantra. All I really needed was bodhicitta and the 6-syllable mantra and Chenrei Zig, and that everything else would take care of itself. And that was tough. I had to sit with that for multiple additional 3 retreats because it was like, water slowly absorbing into concrete. It was tough because I really had been indoctrinated. But this guy kept saying that all you need is mantra and the wisdom of letting go, and everything else will take care of itself. Mantra and the wisdom of letting go. And I worked with it, and I worked with it, and I worked with it for many years. But because of my disabilities, because of my sensitivity to energy, that mantra was doing more harm than good for my really weird body. And then, with what karma I had, good karma I had left, if there is such a thing, I stumbled upon a British woman reciting a pretty lame translation of the source text of all of Dzogchen, composed by Gaurav Dorje. I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. Between my, oh gosh, what was it? My second and third? Or is it my third and fourth? I'm gonna say 3, 6. Okay, at the cusp of my third 3-year retreat, I was exposed to the Opus Magus of Yongjia Zhuanjue, the Song of Enlightenment. And I couldn't quite understand it back then, but something really caught my attention. Fast forward to sometime after that, I was exposed to the source text by Gaurav Dorje, and it made the lights go off. So many of the things I had been indoctrinated by the Gela, Kagyu, and Nyingma seemed like spiritual slavery. And it also seemed like the the popularity of these teachings were ubiquitous. But here are these important teachers. This is the first teacher who, as a young man, said, "Hey, man, Ngondro's what it's all about, and you have to be scared. And here I'm now, and I'm going to scare you about the Ngondro." And that book is translated in English as "Words of My Perfect Teacher." It's still in print. People who love fear love that book. But as an old man, he wrote a book called, as I mentioned, The Heart Treasure of the Enlightened Ones. And this is the first time he got away from fear, largely. And he got away from ritualism. He got away from Lam Rim. He got away from Ngondro. He got away from contemplation. He got away from telling people they had to bow and recite prayers and recite 100-syllable mantras and do complex visualizations. And he said, no, all you got to do is just keep it simple. One mantra, mindfulness, and wisdom. That's it. But centuries before, I would have to say, let's see, 18 take away 6. What's that? 5? And that's 11. 8 times 8, so 12. 12 centuries prior to that, Gaurav Dorje wrote the root text of Dzogchen, which is known in English as the total space of Vajrasattva. It's known in Tibetan as, forgive my pronunciation, Dorje Sempa Namka Che. And it threw everything on its head. He taught there's no need for a gradual path. There's no need for purification practices. There's no need for mantra. There's no need for visualization. There's no need for contemplation. All that's needed is mindfulness and meditation. Much in the spirit of Yongjia Zhuanjue. They both taught, they did not teach a gradual enlightenment. They taught a sudden enlightenment. Not through getting hazed or tortured like you sometimes see in Rinzai Zen, but just from sitting and noticing and releasing. That blew my mind. And of course, I found that not only that the teachings of Lao Tzu and his 81 poems, known as the Tao Te Ching, perfectly complemented the treatise of these two gentlemen. So I found that these 3 fellows really, even though they're from different periods, I take it back. So this guy was around 100 years before the Buddha. These guys were basically contemporaries, but they lived in different regions. This person in, I said Pakistan in an earlier video, I meant Afghanistan, Swat Valley. And it's tough to call it a country because back then it was considered northeast India. But anyway, Swat Valley and mainland China. But their teachings complement each other perfectly. Now, sadly, because of the language in which they were written and the traditions in which they were transmitted, the contemporary translations of these three gentlemen's text is really opaque. It's cryptic. I've been studying this for multiple decades. I finally have a good beat on it. And it's tough. I'm working on, I've been writing a commentary on this. I've written a commentary on this. I'm working on a commentary on this guy's stuff. It's not perfect. It's better than the hole in the head. But I'm trying. So long story short, if you want to go the path of Yang, if you want to go the path of being rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, then it's a difficult path and you never get there. Although other people may think you are, you really don't get there. The easy path, the quick path, is to make use of the tools we already have in our central nervous system. We are already wired to practice mindfulness during our in-breath. We are already wired to practice release during our out-breath. It's already there. All we have to do is get out of our own way. All we have to do is let it happen. The Buddha said it can be done in a week. Now, James here has a question. Good old James asks, "Hi, Lama. Is the Dalai Lama considered a Buddha or a Bodhisattva? Please, thank you." That depends who you ask. Some people think he's a demon. Some people think he's just a monk. Some people think he's a bodhisattva. Some people think anybody can be a bodhisattva. Some people think he's a Buddha. Some people think he's a reincarnation of a Buddha, or at least another monk. Here's how I look at him. I don't agree with him about everything, but no one agrees with everyone about everything. I think he's a very nice man. I think he's very smart. I think he's a good public speaker. I think he's worked very hard to help people from within the confines of the tradition in which he was raised. And so compared to the tradition in which he was raised, he is liberal. But if you compare him to Lao Tzu, or Yongjie Xuanzhui, or Gaurab Dorje, you wouldn't say he was as liberal as these three gentlemen. So he's a good man. He's doing his best with the tools he has from the culture in which he was raised. He's doing his best. I don't agree with him about everything. I don't think it's a sin for people to have gay sex. I don't think it's a sin for people to have oral sex. The Dalai Lama was raised to think those things were wrong, and he does his best to teach that as gently as he can, but that's how he was raised. He was raised to traverse the gradual path with rigidity and fear. It's not his fault. That's how he was raised. I have great respect for him. I have great gratitude for him. I consider him to be one of my many teachers. But I would not say he is the be-all, end-all. I don't know of anyone who's a be-all, end-all. I can only speak for myself and say that I'm a disabled sci-fi geek in monk's robes, doing his best to help people to master the Buddha's path as quickly and as easily as possible. Some people think I'm the second coming of Buddha. Some people think I'm Satan himself, come to drag them down to the seventh circle of hell. Some people think I'm somewhere in between. I don't know. I kind of get bored of giving myself labels. I'm just going to sit here and swing for the fences. I hope you'll be with me. And now, I think it could be great fun. Together as a team, we did a bit of chanting. In fact, let's chant the Wednesday evening excerpt of the total space of Vajrasattva. Now, before we do that, allow me to remind you that if at any point you have a specific question about Buddhist or Taoist, meditation or philosophy or chanting or application, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. The gradual path of purity that leads higher and higher does not correspond to the nature behind action. The so-called gradual path is in conflict with the fact that all healthy vertebrate life forms already have the neurological equipment necessary to master mindfulness, meditation, and empathy. How very kind of you to say, James, to you I give a Yoda high 5. Or is that a high 3? Together. Were there really a path to tread just like the paths of the sky, one would never arrive? When I read the Larry Niven's Ring World, a barbarian was on a quest to follow the rings until they end. But there were rings, there was no end, and so his quest would never end. Upon the so-called gradual path, there is no end in sight, as with the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless day. Together. The authentic condition being thus by being shown as it is attained. Already born with sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, one needs only to be shown that passive noticing correlates with inhalation, that relaxing release correlates with exhalation, and that their fruit is love, spontaneous and uncontrived. To relax into the mastery, it is our birthright. Together. As it is the very essence's manifestation arises from it, oh how marvelous. Despite the complexities and contrivances of the 3-pound supercomputer between our ears, we can step out of our own way into the enlightenment that is our birthright. Together. Time past and time present, or the authentic condition that is complete in its own place. Neither memories nor perceptions are inferior nor superior to each other. They both serve as objects of awareness and release. Aha, look at this. This is an editing opportunity. My poor chin keeps hitting that mic. Together. Likewise, this path is the same. This is its very nature. Whether sight, sound, sensations, flavors, sense, emotions, intentions, cognitions, recollections, or imaginings, or perceived and relaxed, released, the process is the same. The universal path that is the same as that is like the moon in the basis of its reflection. Just as one full moon is reflected in 100,000 petals, likewise, there is no need for elitism. Enlightenment is available for all. As it is the absolute equality of all, is not realized within a limited view. Just as one's peripheral vision is compromised when gazing at the Milky Way through a narrow pipe, likewise, our fearful and rigid preconceptions undermine the perception of our enlightened potential. I look forward to reviewing the meditation instructions and then practicing with you. After approximately 45 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. I've spent more than half my life full time studying, practicing, and reverse engineering the teachings, techniques, and practices of each school of Buddhism so that I could play the Yoda to your Luke Skywalker and help you to quickly and easily become the person that your dog already thinks you are. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. Let us practice 2 brief chants prior to meditation. These chants are not a prayer to a real or imagined entity. These chants are simply us using words to steer our intention. Which intentions are these? The bodhicitta's empathetic intention and refuge's enthusiastic intention. We're going to begin by reciting a more literal, performing a more literal recitation. We're going to set it to something I like to call the triplet chant. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging by relying on thee. Buddha's example, instructions, and students. These 3 bits are so useful that they've earned the metaphoric nickname of the 3 wish-fulfilling jewels that are inferred in the next and final pre-meditation recitation, which is going to be set to the bookend chant. Here we go. May I liberate all beings by relying on the 3 jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the 3 jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the 3 jewels. Mindfulness meditation, they're known by many names, such as Zen, Proto-Zen, Chan, Jnana, Mahamudra, Mahasanti, Ati-Yoga, Dzogchen, and Trekcho. Despite the fanciness of these names and the amount of information on this one page, it's much more easy than it seems. So what I'd like to do, I think, is actually go back and tap a different button. Let's tap button 5. Mindfulness. The key to mindfulness is simple. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we access our sympathetic nervous system, ensconced within the thoracic region of our spinal cord. It has evolved not to facilitate active concentration, but instead to help us to merely perceive, and to do so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. As is illustrated by the 12-syllable inhalation recitation of perceiving this very turbulent play of mind. Mind is playful like a doggy or a monkey. What are some of the antics of mind? Mind sees, hears, feels, tastes, smells, and the like. Internally, mind emotes, intends, reasons, remembers, and imagines. Now let's explore meditation. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we access the parasympathetic nervous system, which is ensconced within both the lumbar region of the spinal cord as well as the tippy top of the cervical region. It has evolved to help us to both physically relax as well as mentally release, as is explored in Exhalation's 12-syllable recitation, relaxing into mind's non-graspable nature. Fortunately, it's not our job to rigidly and superstitiously believe that mind is literally non-graspable, nor is it our job to pseudo-intellectually strive to prove it to the world. That reminds me of that movie about the clueless kid in high school with blonde hair. I forgot what his name was, but he was the tagline for the movie, he's out to prove he's got nothing to prove. I forgot the name of that movie. If you remember it, let me know. It was an independent film. So back in fourth grade, they should have taught us that not all statements are literal, that many are figurative. This is a figurative statement. Every time we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation can now feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast empty void. It could feel as if it was as non-graspable as the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless day, which, although it could be quite tantalizing to the eye, is not tangible to the hand. That's it. Emptiness, no self, birthlessness, they're all just metaphors of non-graspability. Now, I might as well do it while I'm here. It couldn't hurt. Haha, famous last words. Okay, let's quickly do the old uno, dos, tres, cuatro. Here we go. Hit the old copy. Set 9. Okay, here we go. Paste. Fabulous. Well, I'm going to have to open up the hood. Okay. Together as a team, let us meditate as transformatively as Obi-Wan Kenobi upon the toasty sands of Tatooine and under the guidance of the Force Ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn. If you've just joined, please remember, if at any point you have a specific question about Buddhist or Taoist meditation or philosophy or how to apply them, type your question in the chat window. Tally-ho. Let's switch gears from a 12-syllable exercise to a 3-syllable exercise. As we inhale, we could silently and mentally recite, notice this. As we exhale, we could silently and mentally recite, relaxing. And when we hear sounds, instead of trying to ignore them or being resentful of them being present, we can simply label them resonance. Resonance, relaxing. And then whatever we notice simply strengthens our practice of mindfulness and meditation. If we notice a light show behind our eyes, we can play with appearance, relaxing. If we feel pain or pleasure anywhere, we can work with sensation, relaxing. If we start reviewing a memory, we can simply work with the phrase recollect, relaxing. And of course, the phrase imagine, relaxing should be self-explanatory. We can shift gears to the 1-syllable exercise. And this is like an airplane hitting cruising altitude. As we breathe in, we could silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this. As we exhale, we could silently and mentally recite the monosyllabic verb ease. Some of these need explaining. Form is a reference to our sensations, feel is a reference to our emotions, then is a reference to recollection, dream is a reference to imagination. Over the past 30 years, I've had 3 domestic partners or tantric partners who have been very kind to me. And whatever wisdom I have accomplished, whatever growth I have accomplished, is due partly to them. There have been more than 3, but 3 that I've lived with. I'm a big fan of a slender book written by a neuroscientist whose name is Dr. Sam Harris. The name of the book is Free Will. Both physicists as well as neuroscientists have debunked free will, which makes it a lot easier to feel compassion to people who've harmed us or hurt us in the past. Nobody chooses to be a psychopath. Nobody chooses to be a sociopath. Nobody chooses to be a malignant narcissist. Nobody chooses to have borderline personality disorder. Nobody chooses to be neurodivergent. Nobody chooses to have ADHD. Nobody chooses to have autism. Nobody chooses to have health challenges that exacerbate pre-existing conditions. But people do. Numerous scientific studies have shown that people's experience of peril undermine their resourcefulness and help them to access their worst selves. If a man is hitting you with a stick, it's not the stick's fault, it's the man's fault. So says the great Shantideva. Sam Harris would say, if a man is hitting you, it's not the man's fault. It's the series of causes and conditions controlling his choices and actions. He's just going along for the ride. And in a moment of clarity, he'll be as horrified as you were by his or her behavior. We're all a bunch of shitheads doing our best to a great, and sometimes we do, but and sometimes we don't. So there's plenty of room to cut others slack. From mustache man to a school bully. Let us seal this evening's practice with a bit of the old chanting, beginning with kind ethics, and then concluding with the four immeasurables. May all beings practice of kind communication, conduct, and commerce, spontaneous and uncontrived. May everyone be free from misery, may everyone be happy. May no one be separated from the happiness. May everyone have balance from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging freed. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel if you wish. In approximately 11 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's morning meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.